All right, look what just came in. Oh yes. Hey, what's up? This is Joe, and today I want to talk about the Vanatoo Transparent Zeros. These are some tiny speakers from a company called Vanatoo, and they look very different from other speakers that I've seen before. What do you think of these?
Tiny.
Huh?
That is small.
Now, right off the bat, I want to say that these are not inexpensive speakers. They currently are $359 on their website. So as far as build quality, these are all bespoke parts. They're not stuff that you'd find in a parts bin where you might find a driver that's from a different speaker manufacturer. None of that. These are all custom parts. I was talking to Gary over at Vanatoo, one of the co-owners, and he was telling me how he custom designed the woofer for this speaker specifically for the Transparent Zeros. With a sealed enclosure, you typically have to sacrifice some bass. With a ported enclosure, you usually have more bass, but at the sacrifice of maybe bass that's more boomy and less tight, less accurate. Also, if you're trying to tune a box for low frequency extension, you usually have to make the box larger. They wanted to keep the box small, and so instead of using a port, they opted to use a passive radiator. Even though it's a small enclosure, the tweeter is not small. It's a 1-inch tweeter, which is not typical. Usually for the less expensive speakers, you might find something that's 3/4 of an inch, something like that. But this is a full 1-inch tweeter. Very nice touch. And what I noticed is it does make a difference. Another thing is that the amplifier that they use has all kinds of different features that I'll get into, but nothing like I've seen on any other speaker. These were very easy for me to set up. There are a lot of options for input. They have a USB input, so you can plug these directly into your computer. What that also implies is it has its own built-in DAC, digital analog converter. I'm sure you already know that. A lot of audio enthusiasts will spend extra to get an external DAC, but with this you don't have to because it's built in. What that means for a lot of people who would normally have to get an external DAC is that you can save yourself 100, 150, 200 bucks by getting these speakers because they have them built in. It also has an optical in so you can connect it to your TV. It has analog input. It has Bluetooth aptX. And the coolest thing is that it allows you to switch automatically between those. So if you had all those hooked up, depending on which source is playing, it'll automatically switch. That's something that I haven't seen on any other speakers. This also comes with a remote control, which is handy if you do plan on connecting it to your TV. I also found it useful at my desk because the volume is a little bit hard to get to. In that case, I either turn up the volume on my computer or using the remote. Vanatoo has a bunch of DSP modes, from a shelf mode to a flat mode, depending on how you plan on using the speakers, whether they're going to be at your desk or if they're going to be away from the wall, maybe on some speaker stands. So they've given you DSP settings for both scenarios, and it's optimized depending on how you have it set up. Another cool thing about these, and the reason why it's a little bit more expensive than other speakers that you might find, is they've thought of everything. These have a subwoofer output. Most speakers, when you connect a subwoofer, it just keeps the speaker's full range, and then they use a low pass crossover to send the low frequencies to the sub. With these, it also does that, but in addition, it uses a high pass crossover so that the speakers don't have to play the bass notes that are going to be taken care of by the sub. Kind of makes sense, right? What that means for you is that you'll be able to play these speakers louder with more dynamics because they're not having to try to play those bass notes. Also, depending on the DSP mode that you have, whether it's flat or shelved, it's going to vary the crossover point between 120 or 80 hertz. Another thing is that this offers a crazy amount of customization. You can have it flipped over so that the speaker is facing 90 degrees outwards. You can have it flipped the other way where it's angled up, and that's optimal when you are using it at a desk. You can choose which one of the speakers is the powered speaker. You can have it either the left or the right. Sometimes you might be near a wall outlet and you don't want your speaker to have to run all the way across to the other side. So in this case, you just put the speaker that's closest to the wall outlet there, and then depending on where that is, whether it's left or right, you just change the setting on the speakers themselves. Brilliant. Even the light on the back is dimmable. If you're going to use this in a scenario where it's a dark room and you don't want to see that blue light in the back, you can turn that all the way down. Another thing I wanted to mention is you can use them with the grills on or with the grills off. The magnets on these grills are extremely strong, and they've even put a little bit of felt so that it doesn't scratch the face. These guys really have thought of everything. So as far as sound quality, on my desk, I think they're some of the best sounding speakers that I've heard in a long time. I mean, I've had big speakers here, small speakers, cheap speakers, expensive speakers, and these just sound amazing. The bass is there, mid-range is there, the highs are very clear. There's nothing to really complain about. Everything sounds smooth, the bass is tight, and I've confirmed this. I did a near field measurement And what I found was exactly that. These measure extremely flat across the entire frequency range. Now, as you expect, these small speakers are not going to hit crazy lows. This is a 4-inch driver after all, so you don't expect it to be dipping down to the 20, 30 hertz, but it can hit some of those 50, 40 hertz notes, no problem. I know I have a lot of good things to say about these speakers. They really are that good, and I think they're worth the price. I did try these in my living room. Keep in mind, these are extremely tiny speakers, and I wasn't extremely impressed. I did talk to Gary about that, and I think it just has to do with the fact that these are just small speakers. They're not going to be able to fill a big room. The best way I could describe the sound when they're in a larger room is just imagine a small light. So small light is more directed. If I point it at you, you're going to see exactly where the light is coming from, and it's going to be more of a harsh light versus a big light like the one I'm using here. Because it's a bigger light, the light is more dispersed. It fills more of the space, and it's a softer, more filling light. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's kind of the analogy. It's just like a small harsh light versus a big diffuse light. If I were to make the comparison, big speakers act like a big diffuse sound, soft, but it fills the entire room. Smaller speakers, they can fill the room with light, but it's going to be harsher. Anyway, forget all that. The point is, when I have the small Vanatoos in a living room situation, I want to hear where the sounds are coming from, but I don't want the speakers to draw attention to themselves. Hope that makes a little bit of sense. One thing that I don't talk about a lot is the people behind the company. And Gary, the person who I was in contact with, one of the co-owners, was just extremely helpful. Any questions that I had, he was responsive to. And you could tell that they really care about the company. They care about their customers. They care about audio. And it shows. You can tell that Gary really takes pride in his work, and he's really proud of these speakers. That's something that a lot of times you don't consider when you're buying from a company, but I think that you should. Now, to be fair, I have to talk about some of the cons. So one of the cons, like I said, these are very customizable, but the way that you customize them is very confusing, actually. There's some switches in the back that you have to change from volume, bass, or treble, and then you change the knob on the top from either position 1, position 2, or somewhere in between. You unplug the power, plug the power back in while holding the Bluetooth button, and let go of the Bluetooth button. It is a little bit confusing. I think in future iterations, if they could have an app where you could change all the settings, that would be awesome. And also, another thing I found confusing was that there's a volume control on there, which is a little bit hard to get to. You can change that to half, but you can also change the volume control on the remote, and so that halfway point is no longer the same halfway point as it was before. The remote itself is a little bit hard to navigate without looking at it. All the buttons kind of feel the same. They're all round buttons. At least volume up and down is kind of easy because it's right there where you need it, but some of the other buttons you're not going to be able to get to without actually looking at them. And if you have the lights off, you're not going to be able to see anything because these are not backlit. One good thing is that you can actually program these with the Logitech Harmony remotes and use it that way. So in conclusion, I think that these are really excellent speakers. I think they have a crazy feature set. It might be a little bit more than what some people want to spend, but trust me, you are getting your money's worth with these. There's a lot of features that you cannot find on other speakers. And because of the extremely flat frequency response, feel free to use these as studio monitors. They'll do just fine. I do want to compare these to the JBL LSR 305s. Look for that review coming soon. I just need to get my hands on the 305s. Just wait. They're coming. So if you have any questions about the Vanatoo T-Zeros, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all your questions. And if you like the video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. Anyway, that's it. Take care. Bye-bye.